After a 3-month off season, NASCAR is officially back, and they kicked it off with arguably one of the greatest clashes in recent memory. We'll recap the 2025 Clash at Bowman Gray, and today I'm going to give you my top 10 hottest takes for the 2025 NASCAR Cup Series season. Welcome to the first episode of Mondays with Morgan.
Where do you go? Larson up top, all the way up top. Busher, he's on the outside. He's in position. He's got it.
Jimmy Johnson through 3 and 4. Make room. Richard Petty and Dale Earnhardt. There's another 7-time champ. Jimmy Johnson wins his 7th NASCAR Sprint Cup Championship.
Hello everyone, I'm Morgan Weeb. Thank you for joining me today. We got a jam-packed show today. We got the Clash at Bowman Gray to talk about. But boy, we are not light on content for the first episode of Mondays with Morgan. We'll also be touching on my top 10 hottest takes later in the show. But let's kick it off right away by talking about the winner. Chase Elliott wins the Clash at Bowman Gray. It's his first Clash win of his career. He also joins his dad, Bill Elliott, at winning the Clash. They also touched on the broadcast that Bill Elliott went on to win the Daytona 500 the same year he won the Clash. 2 different tracks, but you know, history is known to repeat itself. This weekend was absolutely dominated by Elliott and his 9 car. From starting on pole in his heat, to starting on pole in the main, to leading the most laps, to winning the race. It was just the perfect weekend for Chase Elliott and his number 9 Napa Chevrolet for Hendrick Motorsports. The first question I want to tackle today is this win a good sign for Chase Elliott's season? I really think it's undetermined. I mean, Bowman Gray is so different from the rest of the racetracks that we're going to go to throughout the rest of the season that I just don't think you can make a real comparison. I mean, we saw beating and banging all day long throughout all the heats, throughout the LCQ, throughout the main. You're not really going to see something like that the rest of the year. I mean, yeah, Martinsville, maybe a little bit at Bristol, maybe a little rough up at Richmond, but you're not really going to see the same kind of racing that we saw yesterday. It also was really just tough to pass, and I know a lot of people want to blame the next gen for not being able to pass on short tracks, but Bowman Gray has been known not to have much opportunity to pass, and so that really didn't come into play for Chase Elliott. I mean, we saw him get passed one time by Denny Hamlin after he burned up all his tires towards the end of the first half. But once he got back to the lead and was able to conserve his tires, there was no stopping Chase Elliott. There's also still 38 races to go. I mean, winning the Clash is great momentum, but there's still 38 races if you count the All-Star race and the duels at Daytona. So I'm not going to say he's got all the momentum, but definitely has early momentum for this season. I mentioned all the beating and banging that happened at the Madhouse, and that leads me to basically go over some of the coolest things we saw from the Justin Haley versus Kyle Busch incidents. Ryan Preece just absolutely punting John Hunter Nemechek out of the way, which I think is completely unnecessary. John Hunter Nemechek kind of gave Ryan Preece the old short track bump and run, and then Preece just sent it straight in and punted Nemechek into the wall. I didn't really think that was necessary, especially in the heat races. Ryan Preece has a good enough car at RFK that he shouldn't have to do that. And again, it's Bowman Gray. We knew that was going to happen at some point. In the LCQ, we saw quite a bit of action from Eric Jones hooking Ty Dillon after Dillon almost spun him. That was very interesting to say the least, but that couldn't top watching Zane Smith basically break rule number 1 of NASCAR racing when he tried to spin Austin Dillon out and ended up wrecking himself. But to top it all off, we got Ty Gibbs versus Justin Haley. Poor Justin Haley just couldn't stay off anyone this whole weekend, apparently. After he got into Ty Gibbs and spun Gibbs out, Gibbs just absolutely jumped Justin Haley under the yellow before pulling it into the pits. So, I mean, we've seen Ty Gibbs get heated in the Clash in previous years, so I mean, this isn't anything new. Ty Gibbs, kind of like Ryan Preece, once he was starting to struggle, just started trying to move everyone out of the way, and it just didn't work out for him by the time everything was said and done, and he ended up out of the race pretty much. And then, of course, the biggest unfortunate part as I was watching Eric Jones get turned in front of the field. Now, thankfully, no one outside of Jones really got taken out in that one. We saw Kyle Larson get into him. We saw Josh Berry come away with a lot of damage. Both cars able to continue, and Kyle Larson ended up winning the LCQ, which is kind of shocking that Larson was even in the LCQ. But, more track time, more trophies. Larson gets the LCQ win, as we said before. Josh Berry came home second, so both cars were able to continue and advance. Ryan Blaney took the provisional that they were giving out for the points. Seeing Larson and Blaney in this LCQ was kind of shocking, but to see them both advance was really good. Really good for the sport, I think, to have both your big names in it. But the biggest name that did miss was Ty Gibbs. Not sure if that's something to worry about or not. I mean, Ty Gibbs kind of had a bad end to last year, and it looks like kind of a struggle to start this year, so hopefully it's just a Clash thing. We see a lot of guys struggle in the Clash. I mean, Jimmy Johnson for years wrecked out in the Clash, and that didn't really stop him from winning 7 championships. So I'm not putting too much stock in that. Then we move on to the main event. As we said before, Chase Elliott started on the pole. We mentioned he won it. Now's a good time to look at the results of the Clash. As you can see, Chase Elliott gets the win. Ryan Blaney was stalking him. If they could have changed tires in this race, I guarantee you Ryan Blaney probably was the best car in this field and should have won this race. But, they didn't let him change tires, so it was kind of all about conserving tires. Chase Elliott was able to do a better job at that. Ryan Blaney started last, kind of had to burn his stuff up coming through the field, so that's unfortunate. But, it is what it is. All these drivers knew what they were getting into when they couldn't change tires. Denny Hamlin's third, Joey Logano's fourth. I predicted Logano was going to win this. I thought both based on Logano's ability to be aggressive and the fact that Joey Logano's pretty much won at every new racetrack we've been to recently. I thought he'd be really strong today. Fourth place finish, not bad. We didn't really get to the whole beating and banging on restarts because we didn't have that many cautions in the main event, which I kind of liked, actually. I know some people will disagree with that, but I thought it was really tame, but still had its fair share of action. Ross Chastain, Austin Cindric. When I was making this graphic, I thought Austin Cindric was like in the teens. Austin Cindric is 7th, and that leads me to my next question of this episode. Does a strong showing from Team Penske prove they are the team to beat on the short flat ovals? And I don't think it's anything but yes. Team Penske clearly continues to show that they are the best at this kind of racetrack, which, if we all remember, is like Phoenix, either 1 mile in length or shorter. I mean, you look at it right there. Ryan Blaney 2nd, Joey Logano 4th, Austin Cindric 7th. I understand this is the Clash and that we shouldn't take this as our championship basis. But if you look at that, that's still really terrifying to think that we've gone from November. They've had the whole offseason, all these other teams. They could kind of work on the short, flat, oval package. They knew it was going to be here at Bowman Gray. And Team Penske makes up 3 of the top 10 cars and has 2 of them in the top 5. I think Team Penske is still the team to beat at this style of racetrack, and the fact that there are 3 of them in the playoffs between New Hampshire, Gateway, and Phoenix, the rest of the field is going to have to work on this package, or Team Penske might take 3 of the championship 4 spots. Kind of taking a look at the rest of the field here, Clint Bowyer was really high on Tyler Reddick for whatever reason. I mean, he was solid, but he wasn't anything special. He kind of fell out of the race as the race went on. Shane Van Gisbergen, a nice surprise. He doesn't really have a ton of short track experience, so nice to see him get a top 10. Chris Buescher kind of faded as well. He was running up in 2nd, but kind of got bumped out of the way there towards the end of the race. Ryan Preece, solid 11th. Nice to see that. He didn't really have to move anyone like he did in the heat. As I said before, I don't think it's going to be a trend that Ryan Preece is going to move people unless push comes to shove towards the end of a race. Christopher Bell, kind of a no-show. He was kind of in a lot of the beating and banging that was going on in the back, so he couldn't really get to the front. Josh Berry, while he was very vocal in the LCQ, was kind of quiet in this main event. Todd Gilliland gets a top 15 flagship car for Front Row Motorsports. Really nice to see that. Kyle Busch, he was 2 down at one point. Can we give him an applause? Kyle Busch came from 2 down suddenly, and I said it while I was watching the race. Kyle Busch is going to be back on the lead lap within 20 minutes of going 2 down because of all the cautions. Now, granted, we didn't have as many cautions as I thought we were going to have, but we had enough that he was able to get back on the lead lap. He finishes 15th. I know he finished a lap down. Most of these guys, I think Ryan Preece is like the last car on the lead lap. But still, to come from 2 down to be able to make up spots and finish top 15 in this event, Really good for Kyle Busch. I don't know what the field is trying to prove to Carson Hocevar. I mean, Hocevar really was just racing a short track the way I've seen 1,000 other people race short tracks, and yet Carson Hocevar continues to be deemed a problem. I don't think Carson Hocevar did anything that was really worthy of the incidents he got involved in. I mean, he got punted out of the way a couple times. I really don't think Carson Hocevar was the problem, like TV tried to make him seem. I think he was just, it's Bowman Gray and Carson Hocevar is trying to get up through the field. I mean, we saw this in the LCQ and I didn't hear anyone make any noise. So Kyle Larson, kind of quiet. I mean, he had a pretty much dented up front nose from the get-go from the LCQ. So that doesn't really surprise me. I didn't really think he was going to make much noise, although I thought he'd do better than 17th. Maybe a top 10 still. I mean, it's Kyle Larson, but towards the end of the race, he got caught up in a bit. Same with William Byron. I mean, William Byron kind of got loose there with Todd Gilliland, got spun out at the end of the first half, and then got into another incident with Kyle Larson, and that was just kind of the night. The rest of Hendrick Motorsports here, 17th, 18th, 19th. Alex Bowman completely quiet. Was really shocking about that, considering Bowman has a decent short track record. He's not the greatest. He's got a couple wins at Richmond and Martinsville. Noah Gragson kind of got bumped out of the way a few times. Same with Brad Keselowski. Daniel Suarez. He was in the contention for a top 10 there with the rest of his Trackhouse teammates, but just things didn't go his way towards the end. And Chase Briscoe out of the race with steering issues. Really sucks. He wasn't making much noise before that, probably because of the steering issues, so he finishes last on the field. But yeah, that is everyone in the Clash main. So let's move on to the next discussion topic here. And I saw everyone talking about this. Even TV was talking about this during the broadcast, which I thought was kind of weird. And it's, should NASCAR return to Bowman Gray Stadium, or should they move on to a different market? And I think they should stay at Bowman Gray to a degree. I think NASCAR clearly has something here with reviving this old short track scene. I mean, we've seen countless short tracks be closing down throughout the last couple of years post-COVID. And so to see NASCAR go here to Bowman Gray, kind of breathe new life into the track. I mean, you can see it right here in the background behind me. I mean, look at that. Brand new safer barrier. I know it's from Fontana, but it's still, this track didn't have safer barrier. NASCAR brought in all this nice equipment, new lights, new walls. I don't know if the catch fence is new. It looks pretty brand new, so I'm going to say it's new. Someone in the comments can correct me if it's not new. But I mean, the facility looks about as modern as a local short track can look in this day and age. However, I do think NASCAR needs to keep somewhat of a rotation. I think we're going to stale this event, much like we staled out the LA Clash at the Coliseum. So I kind of came up with this idea of what NASCAR should do with the Clash moving forward. I think that it should be on a rotation, and it should be on a rotation of a couple of things. Number one, it should be bringing old legacy short tracks. I don't want just to see any old short track. I want to see short tracks with history, whether it's within NASCAR or just in the racing world in general. But I also want to see these big markets. I think NASCAR really benefits from being there. I think it should be something like the Chicago Street Race, where you're bringing the racing to the people, not expecting people to go to Winston-Salem every year. So my idea is 1 year you're at a historical local short track like Bowman Gray, and Bowman Gray can be in this rotation of racetracks. And then year two, you go to a really big market. I know there was talk about Brazil being the 2026 Clash location. I think that would be a cool idea. And then if 2027, you go somewhere else that's local within the U.S., and then you take it again to maybe another football stadium or something like that, and then just kind of rotate it out. I think that keeps the Clash fresh. I think it's fun. You can go back to tracks, kind of just Super Bowl-it kind of thing, where the Clash is everywhere. And if you're really into the local short track revival project, every year you basically have North Wilkesboro as the all-star race. So let's grade the 2025 Clash at Bowman Gray. I think this was a pretty solid race. It wasn't 100% crash-filled like they were trying to market this race to be. So that was really good. You did have those long green flag runs that kind of allowed people to show that who was the fastest car. I think most people can agree that Ryan Blaney had the best car, just didn't have the best tires at the end because he started last and had to drive his way all the way up to second. But you also did have that action. I mean, the LCQ pretty much was full of beating, banging, spinning, crashing, everything the Madhouse is. So you kind of had that very nice balance. Plus, you also had tire wear. I mean, we saw Chase Elliott fade at the end of the first half, getting passed by Denny Hamlin. And then we saw the battle between Chase Elliott and Ryan Blaney, which really did come down to tire wear and lap traffic. So you really had a mix of just everything you would want in a NASCAR race. So overall, I'm going to grade this race an 8 out of 10. I think it was a really solid race. I think you got a lot of mix of everything you wanted, both from an action standpoint and a racing standpoint. So yeah, my grade, 8 out of 10. Let me know what you would grade the 2025 Clash at Bowman Gray down in the comments below. But now we're going to move on to my top 10 hottest takes for the 2025 NASCAR Cup Series season. For the most part, these takes are based on reality of it happening. I mean, there's a couple outlandish ones, but you know, it's hot takes. You got to be a little bold when you're making these. So let's start with maybe my least spiciest, and let's go to my spiciest, and then I'll save my championship 4 and my championship prediction for the end. My first hot take is Kyle Larson will win multiple Crown Jewel races this year. The Crown Jewels I'm counting this year are the Daytona 500, the Coca-Cola 600, the Southern 500, and or the Brickyard 400. Kyle Larson has won each of those races in the past outside of the Daytona 500, and if he wins the Daytona 500 this year, I think he could easily sweep all 4 Crown Jewels. He's usually the best car in the field at all of those tracks outside of Daytona, and so I wouldn't put it past him to at least win 2 of them this year. We'll keep it on the Kyle Larson predictions, as I think he will podium at the Indianapolis 500. He was running near the top 5 before he got the speeding penalty. I think this year, in year 2, with more experience behind that kind of car, he could easily contend for the win, if not get a top 3 finish. My third hot take, I kind of mentioned this in my Kyle Busch video early on in the offseason. I think Kyle Busch will win multiple races this year. He is too talented. He's got too much left in the tank. RCR isn't completely awful when he's driving, and he was running in contention for good finishes before overstepping most of the time. I think this year Kyle Busch refines some of that and gets back to victory lane, and I think it happens more than once this year. My next take is kind of an obvious one if you know how the trends of NASCAR go. I think Connor Zilisch will make multiple Cup starts this year outside of COTA. Trackhouse has the Red Bull sponsorship now, and if Zilisch runs really well at COTA, I think he'll easily earn himself more starts, probably at road courses, maybe a couple short tracks. It wouldn't surprise me if we see him kind of get the SVG style schedule where he gets more at super speedways, road courses, short tracks, things where he's kind of in more contention to win than just something like a random Kansas race or something. Going away from the Chevys now, I'm going to predict that Todd Gilliland will be the only bright spot at Front Row Motorsports this year. I think Noah Gragson and Zane Smith are just too inexperienced right now to really make a difference. I mean, this team is still trying to find itself as a Tier 1 Ford team, but Todd Gilliland continues to show improvement every single year. I predicted him to make the playoffs earlier in the week. I think that Todd Gilliland is going to be the one shining bright spot in what we might call a struggling front row. In what we might call a struggling front row team this year. I think Legacy Motor Club will contend for the playoffs. And what do I mean by that? I think that they will finish in the top 20 in points. At least one car. I'm not going to say both cars. It's really hard to get both cars in the top 20 when the field is that tight. But I think Eric Jones or John Hunter Nemechek can have a season where they're top 20 in points this year. And then 2026, I think one of them will make the playoffs. I think Jimmy Johnson has that team pointed in the right direction. Everything on paper says this team should improve this year. Speaking of Jimmy Johnson, let's move over to the driver of the 48 in Alex Bowman. I think Alex Bowman this year will have a really good year. He had an amazing playoffs, and if you take out the DQ from the Charlotte Roval, Alex Bowman could have been a championship 4 contender. And I think he carries that momentum into 2025. I think Alex Bowman will have more wins this year than Christopher Bell. Most people think Christopher Bell is the best driver at JGR right now, and I think Alex Bowman will outdo Bell in the win column. My final hot take this year, and maybe my hottest one yet, I think Denny Hamlin goes winless this year. Denny Hamlin hasn't won since Dover in the spring. That was race 11 of 36. He also has a ton of distractions right now between primarily the lawsuit, but he also has his own race team. He has his own podcast. He's got a new baby on the way. There's just so much that's going on in his life. Plus, he has the new crew chief. He's still searching for sponsors for the year. I just think there's too much chaos going on for Denny Hamlin to find victory lane this year. I know he says he likes the chaos, that he thrives in it. This might be too much chaos, though, even for Denny Hamlin to overcome. My last two hot takes are going to be championship related. Let's start with my championship 4. I said I was high on Alex Bowman this year, and I'm going to keep at it. Alex Bowman makes the championship 4 this year, along with Kyle Larson, Ryan Blaney, and Chase Elliott. If anyone has a chance to stop Team Penske's reign this year, I think it's Hendrick Motorsports. They are the class of the field at most racetracks, and I think that'll bode well for them to get into the championship 4. Now, I think Ryan Blaney will play spoiler. I think he's probably the second best driver right now in the field. I know Tyler Reddick is probably who most people would have as second best right now, just talent-wise. I just think Ryan Blaney is too consistent that he'll get back to his 3rd straight championship 4. And I think he plays spoiler to all these Hendrick cars. I think Ryan Blaney will be your 2025 NASCAR Cup Series champion. I said it before, 35 out of 36 weeks, Hendrick Motorsports is the equipment you want. Race 36, you want Team Penske's equipment. And if Ryan Blaney's the lone Penske car in that field, look out. He may be the best car that day. So those are my top 10 hottest takes for 2025. And I think that's a good place to end this first episode of Mondays with Morgan. I want to thank everyone for tuning in today. If you like this kind of style of show, I ask that you please like and subscribe so you never miss an upload. Also, we got more content throughout the week. We got Turbo Tuesdays. We got Wheelin' Wednesdays, all live on this channel. Until next time, though, I'm Morgan Weeb. Have a good day, everyone.
Where do you go? Larson up top, all the way up top. Busher, he's on the outside. He's in position. He's got it.
Jimmy Johnson through 3 and 4. Make room. Richard Petty and Dale Earnhardt.